welcome to a new vlog and video in cooperation with Reisejung. We're taking a look at days 5 and 6 on board of our second cruise on the Swiss Diamond. We're on the Mosel River. We're starting in Grevenmacher in Luxembourg, and then we're heading on the River Saar to Saarburg and Mettlach, and here on the map you can see our route today. We're starting in Grevenmacher, which is a bit further up the Mosel than most other river cruise ships are going, and I had a small visitor on my cabin window in the morning, and then we left the ship heading to our bus, just a few minutes of walking. We had a very nice bus by the company Emil Weber, very nice luxurious bus, and of course our destination today is the city of Luxembourg, the capital of the country Luxembourg, a very beautiful city that we're gonna discover in the next hours. The bus ride takes around 45 minutes. As it was Sunday, there was not much traffic and we had a bit of extra time that we could spend for a short tour over the Kirchberg mountain, where you can see a lot of nice modern buildings, but our main destination is the old town with a lot of beautiful historic buildings. Unfortunately, you cannot park a bus very close to the city center. You have to go across this bridge, but from the bridge you already have a fantastic view, and right behind the bridge we saw some very beautiful old cars and also the interesting tram of Luxembourg that doesn't need a catenary here in the city center. And whilst our guest enjoyed a walking tour, we had breakfast in the city and then we discovered Luxembourg on our own, of course, as well. Luxembourg has a very beautiful city center, very beautiful old town. It feels already a little bit French. There are a lot of nice restaurants and cafes, very beautiful buildings, and also a lot of nice and interesting shops, although they were closed, of course, as we were here on Sunday. There is also a big airport in Luxembourg. Here we can see a freight plane of Cargolux going to the airport. The airport is also very important for freight traffic, and of course there are a lot more interesting buildings in the city center, but also if you're going to the end of the old town you're gonna reach some nice viewpoints, especially around the Chemin de la Corniche. You're gonna have some fantastic views, especially also of the Abbey Neumünster, which is very famous. On most pictures of Luxembourg you will find this abbey because it's down in the valley of the river Alzette, and there are some fantastic views from the old town down to the abbey. We'll see it in a second. We're now heading to this Chemin de la Corniche that I was talking about, so I can highly recommend using this way because from there you have the most beautiful views. And here in the background you can already see the abbey and this famous view, mainly from the other side looking to the old town with the abbey on the left side, just like this, or a little bit later we're gonna see it even better, but here you can see the abbey pretty nicely, and we're now at the point where you can take the nicest picture. This is the very famous view. You're gonna see a lot on pictures. Promoting tours to Luxembourg, you will almost always have this picture. Here in the background you can see an elevator and the Red Bridge. We're heading there now. To get there we have to go through the city center again. You can see it here again on the left side. Here you can see the bridge, and left of it we have the elevator. Here we are back in the city center. As I said, it was Sunday, so most shops were closed and it was less crowded today. And now we're at the elevator, and at the end of the platform you even have a viewing area with a glass floor, so that's also quite impressive, and you can take a look down into the Alzette Valley. That's where we're also heading down to now. So here we are boarding this very nice and interesting elevator. The elevator is free to use because it is public transport, and public transport is completely free in Luxembourg. So here in the time lapse we saw our way down, and now we can take a look at this interesting elevator. We're now down in the Alzette Valley, crossing the river and heading to the Red Bridge. And right behind the Red Bridge we have a railway station, and that's the railway station Pfaffenthal-Kirchberg. Here we can see it. And here we have another elevator that brings us back up to the platform of the station. And from there is a funicular up to the Kirchberg mountains. And it was built as a possibility to get people that are traveling by train up to the Kirchberg a bit easier without having to walk up the hill or taking a huge detour by the main station of Luxembourg. Therefore we have this very interesting funicular with 4 cars and a huge capacity And up there you have a tram station, so this funicular is a connection between the railway line and the tram. And we are now taking this interesting tram back into the city center and back to our bus, because now it's time to head back to the Swiss Diamond. So here we are on the Red Bridge, and now we're in the city center, and here we are already on our way back to the bus. Our very nice and luxurious bus of Emil Weber, which is now bringing us back to Grevenmacher. Here we can see the interior of the bus. As you can see, it looks very nice, and now we're back in Grevenmacher. Here we can see our wonderful Swiss Diamond again, and as soon as everybody was on board, we were leaving Grevenmacher. Now we're heading backwards out of the port of Grevenmacher until we reach Mertert, where we have the biggest port of Luxembourg, and in this port there is enough space to turn around, and now we're going on back to Germany. Here at this point, the Mosel is the border between Germany and Luxembourg. Usually the border is in the middle of the river, but here between Germany and Luxembourg the whole river is the border, so it's considered to be a part of both countries. That's quite interesting. Here we can see the river Sauer mouthing into the Mosel, and right at this point we're now back in Germany completely, and just a few minutes later we're turning into the river Saar. The Saar is 235 kilometers long, coming from the Alsace in France, and it is the longest river mouthing into the Mosel. Right at the beginning we have 3 bridges, and the last one is extremely narrow. That's already the first reason why bigger ships can't go on the Saar. As we only have 2 decks, our guests could remain on the sun deck as long as they stayed seated. On other ships the sun deck has to be completely closed and everything folded down, but with our small Swiss Diamond our guests could enjoy this breathtaking passage of the bridge. After that everything can be put up again. There are no more that low bridges in the next kilometers, so we can now enjoy the nice landscape on the sun deck. We're reaching the first lock. It's the lock Kansam with a difference in altitude of around 12 meters. Behind that we have a small canal until we're back at the river Saar itself. Here we can see the lock closing, and now we're on the small canal, just a few kilometers long, and then we are back at the natural river Saar. We can see a winemaker in the background. It's Van Volksem, a quite famous producer of high quality wines. Also nearby is another famous winemaker called Van Ortegrafen, co-owned by a famous German TV presenter called Günther Jauch. And after enjoying our high tea time, we already reached Saarburg well ahead of schedule, so there was even some time to discover the city. It was planned to arrive there in the evening, but we arrived there a couple hours ahead of schedule, so there was some time to discover the wonderful city of Saarburg and try a local wine right next to the ship. Saarburg is a city where you have to walk uphill quite a lot because it's a city built on a mountain, but it is worth hiking up there because you got some fantastic views. First we hiked up to the castle, so even a bit higher than the city itself, but from there you have the most beautiful view of Saarburg. And the castle itself is also very interesting as it is free. You don't have to pay any entrance fee, and you can even access the tower of the castle, and from there of course you're gonna have a very nice view. There's also a very good restaurant. We wanted to go there in the evening, but it was unfortunately already fully booked. But if you have the chance to visit the restaurant up there, it's worth it. And now we're heading up to the tower of the castle. Also this one is completely free, you can just easily access it. And from there you have this fantastic view. You can see the beautiful Swiss Diamond below. And here in the background you can also see a cable car. And on top of the hill there is a big Dutch holiday park and a summer toboggan run. And as there were some constructions, we had to walk back down from the castle to the ground level, and then on the other side of the constructions back up. And then you get to this beautiful park where you also have some nice views over the city center of Saarburg. There's a tower where you can go up to, and there's also a viewing platform with this fantastic view. And here you can see the tower, and now it's time to go into the city center itself, because also this is very beautiful. And the main site of Saarburg, of course, is the waterfall right in the heart of the city, directly in the city center. So left and right from the waterfall, and from the water you have some nice cafes and restaurants. You can sit right next to the water, listen to the sound of the waterfall, and of course also enjoy the view. There's a bridge right above the waterfall. So Saarburg is a very unique and beautiful city, one of the most beautiful cities in Germany, and for sure the most beautiful one on the River Saar in Germany. Here we can see some more impressions, and now we're back at the ship. But we soon left the ship again because, as I already mentioned, we wanted to eat outside again. So instead of the castle restaurant, we then went to Keller's Wirtshaus on the other side of the river. And from there you have a fantastic view of your ship and the castle in the background, especially when the sun was slowly starting to set. The views were fantastic. And that's it for day number 5. We are straight away continuing with day number 6, and the next morning we were still in Saarburg. We stayed there overnight, and in the morning our guests had a guided walking tour through the beautiful city, and we decided to do basically the same walk or hike like yesterday again. It's a very nice walk, you can take some very nice pictures, so we did it again, taking some more looks at the city center of Saarburg, enjoying the view of the beautiful waterfall. This time we also decided to head to the church building to take a look at this interesting building. It's not too spectacular, but usually taking a look into a church is always quite interesting. Also from the church you have some nice views over Saarburg and the Saar River. Here we are back in the city center with the beautiful waterfall. You can see it here again a few times, different impressions from the waterfall in the city center. So of course, as you can see, it is a very, very beautiful city. And then we're going back to the viewing point to enjoy the view over the city center again, as you can see here. And also we then walked up to the castle one more time. On our way we also saw some animals, of course. It was very warm. We were here in the hottest time of the year 2025 with temperatures highly above 30 degrees. Of course, then you can see some lizards. There were also some goats around the castle, and we even saw a very cute cat. Also, this cat had a few issues with the temperature, as you can see. Also for the animals, of course, it was very, very hot. We were above 30 degrees, even above 35 degrees, so it was extremely hot outside. So it was the hottest time of the year when we were cruising on the Swiss Diamond. After lunch, some guests started an excursion by bus to the Saarschleife, the Great Bend, whilst our ship was continuing on to Mettlach, and there we met again with the guests that were on the excursion. I stayed on the ship to give the guests who stayed on board as well some information about the landscape and what they can see, and of course there's a lot to see as the landscape is very, very beautiful. We have green forests, steep hills, some rocks. There's a lot to see, also a lot of animals to be seen, of course, mainly birds that can be seen on our way to Mettlach. There's also a very interesting lock on the way. It's the lock Zerrig, the biggest lock on a natural river in Germany. There are bigger locks on the Main-Danube Canal, but this is the biggest lock on a natural river with a difference in altitude of 14.5 meters. It's a very impressive lock. And even though it was extremely hot, I decided to come out on the sun deck to watch the ship going into this impressive lock. And as soon as the ship is in the lock, also of course the temperature is gonna drop a little bit, but still it was almost too hot to be out on the sun deck with temperatures well above 30 degrees. After the lock we have some more beautiful landscape. We're also reaching a carry, which is also very impressive. Here we can see one of the trains that are following the river, also a very scenic railway line. And we are now approaching the carry. As you can see, it looks quite interesting with the red stones, but it doesn't look too big, but that will change when we can see a few minutes later how far it actually goes into the mountain. It's a huge carry, very impressive to see, but from now From this perspective it looks still rather small, but here you can see that it continues for quite a while into the mountain. There has been a lot taken away of this mountain. It is very impressive, and here you can actually see how huge this carry is. So quite interesting to see. Right next to the carry there's also a railway station of a city called Taben. But the city itself is actually quite high above the river. You can see this chapel here on the mountain, and that's the actual altitude of the city, Taben. So if you're taking the train to Taben, you will have to hike up the hill for quite a while until you actually reach the city Taben and Tabenrot. But we are continuing quite relaxing on the river, enjoying the beautiful landscape of the Saar, and we're getting slowly closer to our destination of Mettlach before we are sailing past Saar-Hölzbach with this interesting bridge, which is also quite difficult for the captains because on the right side it's getting lower, so you have to be very careful whilst passing this bridge. And then we are approaching Mettlach, which is famous for its outlet shopping facilities and also for being the hometown of the famous company Villeroy and Boch. As our guests were already waiting for us, we can also take a look at our ship approaching Mettlach. Also quite unique view to see your own cruise ship approaching, but of course the guests who were on the excursion had this fantastic view. And once we've docked, there was also a lot of traffic on the Saar. We have another river cruise ship, the Elegant Lady, and also a freight ship passing us at the same time. And then we also decided to go into the city center of Mettlach. The city center is very small, and it mainly consists of outlet shopping facilities and of course the park around the Villeroy and Boch factory in an old abbey. There's a nice and beautiful lake, there's an old tower, and there are a few pieces of art around the abbey. And of course the abbey itself is also worth seeing. Here we can see the abbey in the background, and here we can see it a bit better. This is the home of Villeroy and Boch, and here we can also see our ship. Here we can see the Elegant Lady coming back from the Saarschleife. And then we are also leaving Mettlach again. We just stayed there for a couple of hours. And we're now going in the wrong direction. First we're going through the lock of Mettlach. After going through the lock we turn around, going again into the lock, and then we're continuing in the right direction because only there is enough space to turn around. It would have also been possible to go through the Saarschleife by ship. I've done that a few times and I can tell you it's not that spectacular as you would expect it. It's a rather a bit disappointing because of course on a ship you're not gonna see the Saarschleife itself, the big bend. You just see your ship going through beautiful landscape and turning to the left. But that's it. And the landscape on the route between Mettlach and Saarburg looks basically the same, so it's not necessary to go with the ship through the Saarschleife. If you want to see it, you have to do an excursion and take a look from above, and only from there you're gonna get this beautiful view. Unfortunately, we're not gonna see the view in this video because, as I said, I stayed on board, so I didn't join the excursion. But trust me, it is beautiful, but only if you're up there. It's not necessary to make a ship tour on the Saarschleife. We're now going back the same way, going past the carry again, which looked even more impressive. In the evening light, the rock was looking even more red, so that was beautiful and interesting to see. In general, it was a very nice evening. Temperatures are going down again finally in the evening hours, so it was a bit nicer to be out on the sun deck. There's some fantastic views, beautiful landscape, and the interesting carry on the way. So for me, this is one of the most beautiful parts of the journey, especially because the River Saar has a very different landscape than the Mosel. Here we can see one of the trains again. Now we're approaching a very interesting part of the river because here you can see some interesting animals. This is one of the few rivers in Germany where you have high chances of seeing a kingfisher bird. Those birds are extremely beautiful but quite rare to see and even more difficult to capture on the camera, but I was extremely lucky to get one of those kingfishers on the camera. You're gonna see it in a second. Here we can see how tight the river is at this point. And here we can see the kingfisher sitting on a branch, so that was very lucky to actually get it on the camera. And in the meantime we had another fantastic show of our musicians Valerie and Thomas. They're always amazing and they guarantee good vibes on board, good entertainment, so I really enjoyed their shows. And in the meantime, we've reached the Loch Zerig again, going down 14.5 meters. Of course, very impressive again. And we are now leaving the loch, and now there is one more highlight of the day. The show of Valerie and Thomas was finished in the meantime, and they joined us on the sun deck because now we're sailing past Saarburg. It was slowly getting dark outside, and usually when it's dark outside on rivers with low bridges, the sun deck remains closed, even though if there's enough space for guests if they are seated. Still, it is a bit more difficult to assess how low a bridge actually is, so the sun deck remains closed in the night. But the nautical team decided that it's okay for us to stay on the sun deck because we were sitting right next to them, so they could make sure that we are actually safe on the sun deck, and so we were allowed to enjoy this beautiful view of Saarburg. Once it was dark outside, the church and the castle are illuminated. It looked amazing. It was a wonderful evening. We really enjoyed it. And now we're approaching the low bridge of Saarburg. Here you can see it. And in a second you will see that there's not that much space left. So only seated down, it's safe to be on the sun deck. And as it's quite difficult to assess how low the bridge actually is, usually on rivers with low bridges, the sun deck remains closed in the night. Here we can see the castle one more time, and then we are heading back on the Mosel, and there we will continue in the next video taking a look at the last days on board. Here we can see the restaurant, Keller's Wirtshaus, that we visited earlier on. And that's it for the days 5 and 6. I hope you enjoyed this video. Here you can see when the next video will be uploaded and the name of the songs. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to comment, like, subscribe or share the video link. I hope to see you in my next video then. And of course, you're gonna find the links to Reisejung and Valerie and Thomas here in the video description.